Welcome, listeners, to episode 22 of Future Secured. And as we wrap up 2024, we're really excited to be joined by special guest Cole Cornford, founder and CEO of GalarCyber, a company making waves in Australia's cybersecurity landscape. Now, GalarCyber is known for its unique approach to application security, helping organizations of all sizes secure their software from inception to production. And Cole has built a company that stands out in a crowded market, offering practical solutions that are really addressing the real risk businesses are facing today in today's digital world. In this episode, we're going to dive into Cole's journey from studying at the University of Newcastle, working for major orgs like Westpac, and then founding his own cybersecurity company during the pandemic. We'll also explore the challenges of building a cyber business in Australia, the top threats facing small business in 2025, and the critical role cybersecurity should play in shaping government policy ahead of the upcoming federal election. Well, thank you so much for joining me again today, Jason and Cole. And over to you, Jason, for the first question.
Yeah, well, I love the name Galah, and I'm glad that he's got his pink shirt on for today. So I've always loved the name, and this is sort of a return favor because Cole had me on his podcast. I reckon probably about maybe 2 years ago or something. I'm sort of guessing roughly on that sort of thing. Um, and it's good to have the shoe on the other foot now, mate. So as we were talking before you came on here, Tom and I can sort of sit back on our heels a bit more and get you to do most of the work on this one. So looking forward to it, mate. But yeah, give us a bit of background. Tom mentioned a few things there because. You're in a very unique area, application security, right? That's it's not commonly sort of spoken about. You do a lot of work on that. I think it's good that you sort of get out there what it's about, and you do a great job of it. But just for the listeners, do you want to just give us a brief time on your background and how you sort of ended up here and what application security to you actually means?
Yeah, sure. I guess I started like just doing software engineering at Newcastle University. I was like really keen to move into video game development. I liked playing online games back in the day. Until in my final year, I did a course in data security and found that was kind of interesting as well. When I was younger, I got scammed playing online games because I guess I was pretty silly. Someone sent a message to me telling me that they were from Steam support and they needed my username and password to validate that I actually owned my games. Otherwise, they would lock out my account. And so I think I got burned when I was really young. And because of that, I've always been like a little bit careful online. And since I wanted to move into game development, when I did my data security course, I felt, oh, maybe security is also something that I could be doing too. But when I graduated, I found there was effectively nothing available in Newcastle at the time. And
Mm.
I went for a grad role at Telstra. And I think the funniest thing there was that they called me up, and I was one of the last two candidates back in 2012. And they gave me a no and said, hey, you're really technically brilliant, but you're also a jerk. So can you just fix the jerk thing?
Oh,
That was really like, I loved that. That was such good feedback for me because then I spent a lot of time on like, hey, why am I
your
like the way I
jerkiness.
am? Yeah, like
Mm.
I don't want to be a jerk anymore. I don't, if that's the
Yeah.
feedback, because everyone else would say like, hey, thank you for your application. You're unsuccessful at this time. Please apply next year, which is not terribly useful. So
What was the
eventually,
how did they? Can I just ask on that one? How
yeah,
what do you think, or where was it that they sort of perceived that you were a jerk? What was that? Did they give you that more precise feedback that you were a jerk because of this or that?
yeah, I think it's so this had the same recruiter for like the entry level programs throughout the whole cycle, and I know that had this like group session where they gave you like I wouldn't do this personally nowadays. I think it's all been debunked, but it's like get everybody together in a circle, like a group of 10 people, and just get them to solve a problem together and see who's like able to talk about stuff and who's like, sitting in the corner not participating and all
Works
that
well in the
kind of
group.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I think since I used to play a lot of computer games online, I'm always used to being authoritative and direct because I was the captain of my team all the time. Which,
Mm.
but obviously in a lot of corporate settings, that can be perceived to be jerky. And I guess the
Yep.
nature of way I was like communicating to people, which if you did it online games is normal in real life, not so
Not so
much.
much.
So I went from there and I went and joined the ATO.
Yep.
And the ATO was beautiful. I nearly self-selected out of moving into security until one of the people there told me, "Hey, like, why don't you like actually come across? You got software engineering chops. Like, I think you would do really well in the AppSec space." Joined the AppSec team. Almost the entire team immediately vanished as soon as I joined and said, "We're going to go create a security operations center," because that was the cool thing at the time.
Mm.
And And then I got left in charge of the AppSec function, right? So then over the years, I ended up progressing into management, growing a team, learning about different types of tech. I went into Westpac because I felt like I didn't really want to be at management so early in my career in the public sector. Just got to do individual contributor work for 3 to 4 years. Then I moved over to San Francisco, and then I came back basically straight away because of the pandemic,
Mm,
and like figured, well, I'll work remotely. It doesn't matter if I'm doing 3 a.m. till 11. Um,
mm,
and then my girlfriend, now wife with kids, but girlfriend at the time, was like, "Hey, do you know in China we have this concept of 996? And you're just doing like a normal work day and clocking off and drinking mimosas and swimming in your pool at around 11 a.m. Do you know that's really
mm,
lazy? Have you considered starting a business?"
mm.
So I was like, "Yeah, I've never considered that, but why not?" So then I just
Yeah.
rang up people and said, "Hello, do you need AppSec?"
Mm.
That's all she wrote. So it's kind of funny that I got that kick up the backside to actually get it going. But I really did enjoy my like year of mimosas and swimming every day. I've never been as fit as that in my life ever.
Yeah, well, that sounds pretty good. The mimosas, obviously, part of the fitness regime,
Oh
but
yeah,
also
very orange juice, mate. That's it.
often jerks end up running companies because you can't work for anyone else, right? So that's the other part. We sort of loop it back, right?
So what was the experience of starting a cyber company in the pandemic? And you said you picked up the phone, you got a couple of first customers. I mean, how did that first year or two look like for you?
Yeah, so the first year was reasonably straightforward because it was just myself, right? And if with like 9 to 10 years experience, or not even that much, so it would have been like 7 or 8 at the time, of doing specifically application security. If I wasn't able to convince people about this, like being good at this niche, then there wouldn't have really been any market validation whatsoever,
Mm,
right? And since I was the one doing the work, we would always know it would be like pretty high quality because I have a lot of integrity about making sure I do the right thing by people. And there was a lot of people who had worked at big enterprises who'd migrated to technology firms at the time because there was a massive amount of cash available to like do startups. So you saw all sorts of companies like Mr. Yum and Cruise and like I don't know, just heaps of them hiring all of the AppSec talent in Australia, and
mm,
that meant that most of the enterprises actually had a glaring gap in filling up their AppSec seats. And so I was able to help a couple of them just do occasional activities like SDLC assessments or source code reviews or training for developers and so on. But it was in my second year that I actually found was like the really challenging one because when you're just a solo contractor, it's pretty straightforward. You get a gig
mm,
and then you're on the gig for like 6 months or whatever, and then you find your next gig, right? And hopefully you're smart enough to build into your rate card like what your holidays or whatever is worth. But if you're doing having to manage a team of people and they have to do a lot of different
mm,
things, it's a very different ball game. And so my second year, I actually had like no understanding really about all the other aspects of running a business. Like, how do I create an effective marketing funnel with different types of channels? Like, how do I like have a message that resonates and solves problems for different customers? What is sales qualification? Who do I actually sell to? How do I manage my company finances? Like, what's a quick ratio? What's cash flow? What are all these things? So
mm.
my second year was basically going to the school of hard knocks and learning that I need to graduate from this. I know that a lot of people would chuck in the towel, but I'm a pretty optimistic person. So even when things went really badly, I was able to pull myself back up. So
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to raise there, Cole. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize going into business is actually, especially when you start off solo like that, and at the time you did, is all the elements that go into it. The sales and marketing, right? People sometimes get so fixated on the business or what they do as a business, like AppSec or doing the job, you're not doing the sales and marketing or filling that funnel for where is your next role coming from or where's your next job. And to that also, the cash flow. It's different when you're getting paid by someone else and you just got to look after that and they look after all the finance stuff. The financial side of it, yeah, the cash flow, the cash burn, the cost of actually delivering the goods and all that sort of stuff. It seems like, oh, I'm charging a lot for it. But at the end of the day, once you know your numbers and you break it down, you go, actually my hourly rate was probably less than what I was doing when I was working for someone else. So all these elements need to be taken into account, don't they? That is the trick of business, and the best way to learn sometimes is to get into business and then learn as you go, because often people don't do it unless they actually have to.
Yeah, and I always encourage people to like, even if it's a small business, it's not too hard to register a company on ASIC and then just like
Mm,
learn about all the other different aspects around running a company, even if you still keep your main job. So maybe you're doing an Etsy job to just sell like plush Galah toys or something, right?
mm,
That's okay. But then you'd have to say, cool. So I need to work out how do I want people to come and actually understand I have toys to sell. How do I sell
mm,
them? What is the logistics around getting them? What do I have to do for tax? How much money's coming in, money's going out? What is like the cost of delivering these goods? So like then you start to have a much better attitude and mindset when you start dealing with executives, even in an enterprise context now, because a
mm,
lot of them have actually come from running a smaller business and then moved into executive roles, and they treat them basically like their own businesses. So whereas if you've just climbed the corporate ranks, usually you've got an experience of just being able to deliver cybersecurity programs, but you
mm.
don't really connect very well with the broader business. So
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's, I think, also the other part is that to connect with people you talk to at the other end, if you understand their business because you run a business or you've run businesses before, that is a key thing as well, because that gives you that flow back and going, I know you will be in this situation because I understand business, right? I understand what you'll be in. And even if they don't implicitly say it, you know what they're going through because you've been there before. So you can actually talk to the person and say, like, I know, Cole, where you've been and where you are in your business now because I've been there before, right, mate? So I know how I could help you, what I could do for you, and all those sorts of things. And if I could take the things off that you don't like to do, is that worth you paying me to do it? It's almost like you talked about the pool, having someone, just say clean your pool or someone do your garden, all that sort of stuff to free you up to do all the key things you should be doing in your business. And this is often, and Tom and I have this discussion as well, is freeing up your time of the lower menial tasks that you can do in your business to actually get you to working on your business rather than in it as well. I don't think there's ever a truer statement in business than work on it, not in it, when you get big enough.
yeah, absolutely. That's one of the mistakes I made in my second year, is that like people wanted to hire Cole, they didn't want to hire GalarCyber. So then it was really
Yep.
hard to delegate work out to other people because the expectation was that I would be delivering the work. It's only when I realized how do I sell services and then have other people deliver the services, and I'm in charge of making sure that those services are high quality. And
Yep.
like some of them I'll deliver because it sucks when you're a business owner and you realize that 90% or 100% of your job is nothing to do with the actual work. So
Yep.
I always take training or I always do secure code reviews because those are the two tasks I love doing. They're really fun for me. But I want to make sure that other people are delivering like pen testing or delivering like cloud security audits or whatever. And I maintain the qualities of all of those engagements and the interface with the customers all the time. But yeah, you're right. I do have that distinction a lot of the time. Do you want to be working in your business or on your business? Because if you're in your business, then you're basically working twice as many hours for half as much pay.
And that's a good point. And Tom, for his birthday, October this year, gave me a great book, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. And he
Yeah.
has a quote in there that 80% done by someone else is 100% fucking awesome, right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
even if they get it to 80% of the level that you get it to, but that frees up your time to do the other stuff that really grows your business. That's key, right? But having systems in place and you know, really marking down how you do things and the systems around that and giving them the guide work. And yeah, that book I recommend highly to anyone in business. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. It's got some great stuff in there too.
One I liked by an Aussie author recently I read was by David Shine, called The Dumbest Guy at the Table. And
Yep.
as a bootstrapped founder, I found that one was a lot better than most of the hustle grind, like self
Yep.
improvement books like the Tim Ferriss's and stuff. But
Yep.
at least with David Shine's, like it was just very real to me because a lot of the
Mm.
challenges that he was talking about were things that I've encountered bootstrapping a business with no capital. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
saw him
It's
speak earlier this year at a cyber event. One of the clients. It was really fantastic to get that kind of
mm,
perspective, and it really set the tone in the room too, I think. And just reflecting on what you guys have been talking about, Cole, it's interesting. I think this has been the area Jason has had the most focused mentoring with me. Is actually not the brand storytelling, not all of those kind of skills. It's actually doing the basic business tasks, filling the pipeline, making sure it's always filmed full, all that kind of stuff that really took me by surprise. But actually, that's the meat and potatoes. You got to get into it, and then this new kind of idea that we're tackling, now at the moment, which is where is that time best spent. So how have you adapted, say, in the last kind of 12 months with that to building a team and you doing what is the most valuable thing for you, but also not becoming like a as you touched on in the beginning, and Jason mentioned, some CEOs often come up as jerks and stuff like that. but being able to do the thing that only you can do, and to having a team around you that is kind of filling the rest of those roles. So how have you gone about kind of organically building that in the last year?
Yeah, I think there's a few aspects to it. I'm going to say number one is to just surround yourself with some really good mentors who can then like kind of keep you on the straight and narrow and stop you deviating. Because it's really easy to just be watching all of the stuff that turns up on LinkedIn or on TikTok or YouTube, and like reading books and listening to podcasts and being a bit of a weather vane, right? Like the wind blows
Mm.
this way and then it blows that way, and then suddenly you're not really making any progress. You're static. Yeah, you,
Mm.
you want to at least
Correct.
be like moving in a
Any
specific
shiny
direction.
objects,
Yeah, yeah.
AI.
And so like having the right mentors, like you don't have to follow their advice, but that advice is quite necessary for you to make up your decision about where you want to be going, what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. And I remember last year an exercise I did was actually taking the time to look at how I'd spent the last 6 months and whether something was effective or ineffective for me to be doing. And early at the start of the year, I realized two things: is I'm an incredibly effective salesperson, because I understand my subject matter, like application security. I'm probably one of the best people in the country at it. If I don't,
Mm.
sorry, humble as well and a jerk, right? So,
Mm. No,
but
but it's true. But I think you should own that. And this is something that I don't think we should apologise for. And something in Australia, if someone said that in America, it'd be like, "Fuck yeah, right."
yeah,
But I think you should own it because I agree. I think you are. And watching you grow the last couple of years, even since I first met you, I think it was ASA Adelaide where we first met in person. That's
mm,
probably maybe 3 years ago or something like that. But I remember meeting you then and just watching it. So I love watching people grow over the time, and the way you've grown through your business and everything you do, the way you carry yourself, the way you deliver things. It's a joy to watch someone, sort of grow into themselves like that. So I think you should own that. And I wouldn't apologize for it. I think you should really own the fact that that's who you are and that's what you do. And that's probably, you're a good salesperson because you believe in what you do and you deliver the goods, right? So just own, mate. I wouldn't apologize for that.
yeah. Thanks, Jason. I know that Macallan 16 is probably not your tipple anymore because you don't drink, but I do
No,
remember
no,
back at,
no.
Adelaide State,
Yeah,
that's what we
that's
got onto.
yeah. No, I've retired from drinking almost 2 years now, so
Yeah.
I still have a sniff of whiskey every now and then, and remember what it tastes like. That, yeah, that's
Someone,
I remember
someone the
that.
other day sent me a Archie Rose, Fiona de Galah like drinking cup sculpture thing,
Oh,
and I was
how
like,
good.
"Where's the gin?" And they're like, "We got the gin.
Yeah.
You get the dumb Fiona
Yeah.
glass." And I was like,
You don't get the
I'll
fun
take it.
part. Yeah.
I'm all right with Galah memorabilia.
Yeah.
But so the question was, how am I spending my time? So I find I'm really effective because I know the material. I'm really passionate about solving the problem, and I've spent such a long time kind of reinventing myself to be a approachable, fun, and easygoing person. And I also,
Mm,
since I understand business extremely well, whether it's like because I've done like 7 or 8 years large enterprise as well as run my own company, so I can talk to either startups and scale ups about what their challenges are and build solutions that make sense for that ecosystem, as well as talk to large enterprises about,
mm.
well, how do we build a scalable AppSec program? And so I target those two niches. I find that mid market's not effective for me.
Yep.
I also spend a lot of time on marketing as well because I'm of the belief that I've got an extremely powerful brand with GalarCyber. Like
Mm.
I made it. This is one of the few things I did exceptionally well early on was to choose a brand that is prolific and easy for people to recognize and
It
has
stands
like
out.
very distinct
Mm,
colors. We'll go
mm.
into that a little bit later because I know that you guys want to dive into that. But for me, I know that last year I did a lot of conference speaking and traveling around the country, shaking hands, kissing babies, smiles and miles, right? And
Are you allowed to kiss
that's
babies these days, or is that
I just
not
mostly
the
my
case?
own baby Monica, so
Okay,
she's all
that's
right. But and I don't,
right.
there's
That's
not
okay.
terribly many babies at the cyber conferences in my experience. But look,
No, no, no.
if you bring your kids there, but
Start them
it's
young.
yeah, start them. Oh, God damn
Pick
it,
your
mate.
box.
But it's yeah. So sales and marketing take up, I'd say, like three days of my week, and then
Mm.
I've got the last 2 days, which I think I've tried to minimize the amount of operational work because I
You
found
mean the
that
last 4 days? The last 4 days, mate. Yeah.
this is another thing that's also very important to me is that you, as a business owner, can effectively let business consume all available time. And
Yeah.
unless you're very specific about blocking out time, you're going to let it take up everything. And so, one of the things that I live and emulate and make sure that my staff members do as well is to block out time for school pickups, school runs, after school activities, for weekends, and just remember that we're here for decades, not days. And so if they burn out in a day, they're not going to be able to be there for the decade. And so I'm always of the view, yep, I'm going to do my art club on Monday and my tennis club on Tuesday with my daughters. but I'm still going to work really hard, you know? And I think a
Mm.
lot of people like, they don't have that discipline to like absolutely grind like really hard on those specific days. And that's okay. But I do it because I want to spend the time with the kids and family. But yeah,
Yeah.
the first day is usually my operational day, which is like all the stuff I don't like doing. So drafting proposals, drafting statement of work, so like doing my accounting, PAYG, cash flow fundamentals, all that kind of stuff. And something that was a big help for me was to get someone in to help manage a lot of that for me. So I'm really
Mm.
thankful and appreciative to one of my staff members, Khaled. And then Fridays is delivery. So like sometimes I'll just delegate all of the ops stuff to Khaled and do 2 days of delivery. But I figure if I don't have my hands on the tools and just keep doing the work, whether it's like strategic stuff or doing some more technical, more interesting work, then I'm going to lose my touch and not be able to participate in the industry all that much because um, application security, more broadly, software security does change quite frequently. So
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I've sort of, I think with regard to time, how long you work or whatever, I love working and I do it excessively probably in some people's eyes, but it's how hard you work in the period you give yourself to work, right? That's the difference. Is some people can stretch the time out and they just do the same amount of work over a period of time. Some people can get done in 8 hours, or they'll work 12 hours, but they'll stretch it out to 12 hours, you know. So it's really critical, I think, whatever period you work and whatever you've got. And that's why deadlines and timelines are so important as well. You know, task only takes as long as you give it. You know, if you have a month to move out of your house, you'll still be rushing that last weekend when you're moving. If you got 2 weeks, you're still rushing that last weekend. And if you got the weekend, you'll get it done in that weekend. You just work extra hard. So it really depends on what time frame you give yourself and to deliver that stuff. And if other stuff's important, you time block that. The big rocks in your calendar in your life, like your kids, block that out. But just make sure you work your ring out and the stuff around it. That's where people sort of fall over, I think.
And that's self-discipline, Cole. So, is it something that you've really worked hard on? Have you kind of used formulas to kind of end up? I noticed very specifically you're doing the stuff you don't want to do at the beginning of the week. A big fan of doing that. I tend to try and do the stuff that's in my head that I'm worrying about first every day. So, like the things that are bothering me are out of the way very quickly. It gives you a little win you can build on. So, is it just been organic? Has there been any formulas or kind of tactics and tools you've used to develop the regularity of the rhythm?
yeah, I'd say with discipline, there's a few things for me. Is you'll be surprised, but online computer games definitely helped with that. There's nothing like I feel like a lot of look. I know people will laugh at me about it, but like a lot of people are not very good at critically analyzing themselves. Like they'll just shy away from the content of like, hey, I'm going to record myself delivering a podcast or a conference presentation, and then the next day I'm going to watch it back and I'm going to count my ums and ahs and work out when the jokes didn't land and figure out like why do I suck and so on. And online, when I played a lot of online games, that's exactly what we did. We would like play games for a few hours, and then we'd look back at our recordings of our games and sit there like,
Okay.
like critiquing ourselves. And it's why we got a lot better, a lot faster than most of the other teams, you know. And so I think that that's part of why I have the discipline to being like continually improving. Another thing is just having a good motivation and a goal to work towards, right?
Mm.
Um, I know that like I didn't grow up with a lot of wealth. Like my mum was a laundry worker, and my dad drove trucks between hospitals to deliver linen. So as you can imagine, dad was always working overtime, not really spending much time with the family. And yeah, my mum was on minimum wage because she was just working at a hospital. And so I've never really had
Mm.
the trappings of wealth or any real like I used to grow up in the Hunter Valley, right? So for me, I thought, well, how do I make sure I, as a dad, give a lot more time back to be with my family and be present because I didn't have that growing up, and also I need to make sure I have enough wealth so that my kids have a maintainable and just easier shot at life. And so if having those two northern stars really helps me make decisions about being motivated and disciplined. And I think another thing is just like having an ability to put yourself in a zone. So for me, sometimes it's just putting the headphones on and then saying, okay, I'm now going to put Ocarina of Time soundtrack or Final Fantasy VII soundtrack on. And that's
Mm.
the music. And I just get going and it just sits in the background. I know I'm focusing on the one task, right? Um, but yeah, like it, I know a lot of people when they're sitting at the desk, they think, "Oh yeah, I'm at the desk, I'm doing work," but actually, no, you're just sitting at a desk, and
Mm.
it's easy to go to your emails and then go to LinkedIn and then go and have a look at Facebook, and then you're like, "Wow, I've wasted 30 minutes like fucking around doing nothing useful."
Correct.
I find a ritual that helps you get
Mm.
you into zone, and start early with it as well. Like the early,
Yeah.
I think there was a book, Eat the Frog. I haven't eaten the book,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
sorry, I haven't read the
You haven't
book
eaten the
or
book
eaten
or
the
the
book.
frog.
I haven't ate any
Or
of
the
them.
frog.
Yeah. But what I do know is that everyone references it and tells me that Eat the Frog is meant to be do the hardest task in the morning.
Correct. Yeah.
Not that this podcast is the hardest task for me, but I know
Yeah.
that
Must be
I
close
still.
though.
It's up there, I tell you. Having to deal with Jason
It's at least frog's
sometimes.
legs.
It's so
Yeah, it's at
challenging
least
for me.
frog's legs.
You didn't start a business with him.
Hey, that's not on me, mate. But yeah, doing
He
the
started
harder
drinking
tasks
now.
early helps.
Oh,
Yeah,
he started drinking now. He was non-drinking before, I met him.
that's what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't know. I feel like discipline's something you can work on. But another, I guess, like one other final aspect to jump on that is to your willpower is finite, and so creating systems where you don't have to use willpower helps a lot. And so like one example might be, hey, my house is full of marshmallow Santas right now because every Christmas my mum used to buy me marshmallow Santas, and so I've got this like kind of thing trained in my head that every time I buy a marshmallow Santa, I'm kind of being close to my mum because she passed away in 2015 unexpectedly. And so, like, but the thing is, they're in the house, and while they're in the house, I'm just going to go and eat them randomly. And probably after this podcast, I'm going to go eat a marshmallow Santa because I have no self discipline there. But if instead you say, okay, well, I don't have any marshmallow Santas in the house or whatever else, then guess what? There's enough friction in place so that you don't go out and have to buy them because it's too annoying. And so you can probably find ways to introduce friction into your lives for the stuff that you don't want to do, and like make it easy for the stuff that you do want to do. So, like gym. Maybe it's you having to do it at home. Maybe it's you blocking off a calendar. Maybe you do it after a school run. Do whatever you possibly can to just like make it less hard. Like, what if it was easy?
I found that one of the simplest ways for me has been in the way I connect that with my brain. So, for example, rather than going, I need to service my car, I go, actually, where am I going to service my car? What is their phone number? And call them for a time. And by restructuring that thought, it actually turns it into a series of tasks that I can actually deal with immediately. And I found that has been one of the kind of the best things that I've ever kind of sorted out in my brain. But I got to say, I've never had a marshmallow Santa, so I'm going to have to go and hunt for one of those now.
You're missing out. So the only caveat I'd add to that is don't recommend that to software engineers because they end up doing something called yak shaving. Have you heard of yak shaving before?
No, do tell.
No.
So it's a story where basically a software engineer says, okay, I need to do this menial task. And then the first thing he says is, well, for me to do this, I need to go to like Bunnings and then to go get this one. Oh, but I can't go to Bunnings because I got to fill up my car with fuel. But I can't fill up my car with fuel because I got to go get it serviced. And by the time 20 other tasks, he says, I had to travel to the Himalayas to shave some yaks for fuel to put like and so but the main thing is all you need to do is the one task, and they keep finding reasons to do all the other things to get to that one task. So if you notice that you're shaving yaks, maybe stop.
Yeah, it's like the old trying to eat an elephant in one bite ain't going to work.
That's
or
it.
climb Everest in one go, it ain't going to work. All right, well, let's take a little bit of a steer now. So looking across 2024, so you were saying you kind of focus on enterprise and that small to medium enterprise, the small business sector in Australia. I think 98+% small businesses. So let's just focus on those for the moment. So what kind of threats around application security or what gaps did you see over the year? And where do you think the challenges are next year for small to medium enterprises in Australia?
Yeah, so we don't really target what I'd say is small business. We tend to target startup, scale up. And usually startup and scale up overwhelmingly has their business is built around a software product because as an application security or software security company, we solve challenges for software, not so much for like network or professional services or corporate security and so on. So I think the challenges tend to be that just most usual business challenges is that they don't have the ability to raise capital terribly easily because right now it's easy to just leave the money in the bank account for a lot of investors. So why would they take a risk and put the money in an unproven startup, right? And so that's always going to be in the back of my mind whenever I'm dealing with any of these smaller businesses, is that cash flow, and it's like, the burn down rate is really tight for them. And so investment in cybersecurity is often one of the like least important things for them to do unless it helps them enter an additional market. And so that's something that I commonly see is a proliferation of like the Vantas and Dratas and Cytails and so on, that they've absolutely captured the Australian professional services market at the moment around GRC, because there's a lot of these smaller businesses who are really keen on achieving SOC 2 Type 2 or getting ISO 27001 certified, because then that enables them to participate in foreign markets or have enough of a security layer so that they're able to attract more valuable customers. And so like at these products as revenue generators, I think has really displaced a lot of traditional GRC consultants who are doing security because they want to be a more secure organization. And I think that this is extremely prolific in the SMB to SME sector. And I'm not really sure whether it's a good thing yet, because obviously when you use these products, they kind of give you a lot of like, high level context and tell you, here's the bouncy ball, go do all of these things and you'll be a secure organization. But I think they do the bare minimum to get the certification so that because the goal is not to be secure, the goal is to enable revenue generation. And so that's something I've been seeing over the last year that has definitely affected AppSec as well, because if you're a software business, then there's a lot of aspects within like, Vanta or Drata or whatever that's related to your cloud environment, to your source code repositories, to making sure you do adequate assurance and so on. And so Visa is driving these kind of activities and behaviors. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I feel like people are too focused on like, how do I make more money, or how do I make sure that the bottom line isn't as big as it is at the moment. And next year, I'm anticipating things to change a little bit because, well, we have like three major events: A, Australian federal election; B, US inauguration; and C, I'm anticipating interest rates will probably go down in February or April. At least I'm a betting man and looked at the the odds. So
Probably
those
May.
can change it, right? Like,
So, Cole, I'm going to ask you first, and Jason, I'd love you to weigh in on this. What do we need to do with the Australian public to elevate this as an issue so it is something that the politicians are actually actively campaigning on? Because at the moment they're not.
yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is we need like kind of a slip slop slap moment, right? Like, or I don't know if anyone's in the Hunter, but we have like lots of mine subsidence, and there was like this Maury the mole. If you're a mole, like if you see a hole, don't think you're a mole, don't jump in a hole. And like, I mean, that campaign is probably very effective for a young child like myself. I imagine there's a lot of people who'd say, yeah, it's probably a bad idea to jump into some like, like coal mining tunnels and see what happens. Like, but I guess people are doing that. But anyway, like we know that slip slop slap had like, or stop drop and roll, like a free word acronym kind of thing, has had tremendous impact on like everyday Australians to like do the right thing. And I don't think we've had our slip slap moment yet for cybersecurity, because like a lot of people assume it's the government's responsibility to be solving it, and then but also we're not putting the tools in place for individuals to recognize that they're also personally accountable to be managing their own personal data. And I guess the other thing is that most people are not technically literate. Like, all of us here, we've been in this space for quite a long time. We understand all this technical stuff, but same as lawyers, same as medical professionals, it's not easy to access advice. And even when we do provide advice to the general public, it's take Essential A. How do you even tell someone to like limit administrative privileges, like who just runs a fish and chip shop, right? Like it's not so easy. But yeah, my kind of view is that since it's a bipartisan issue that both parties agree with, it's really hard to actually use it to wedge the opposition party about like any real for anything. Like, and so it's tax reform is like kind of a similar boat. No one wants to go undertake that, even though there's a lot of benefits for us to do so, because like voters are not going to be making decisions based on tax reform. So, what do you think, Jason? I think it's
Yeah, I
hard to
think
influence folk.
Yeah, look,
So,
and this is my wheelhouse, right? You know, the nut I've been trying to crack for a long time. I mean, talk about slip, slop, slap. I think I posted about that 6 years ago, right? That we do need that, you know, and on here multiple times I've spoken about, you know, that recent campaign with the government, you know, to act now, stay secure, which was, you know, passphrases, multi-factor authentication updates when available. There is your slip, slop, slap moment there. And as I've said, the analogy back with cars, you know, your seatbelt is your password, and it should be a password manager, I believe. Multi-factor authentication is your airbags in your vehicle, and servicing your vehicle is like updates when available, right? So you can tie the analogy to something that people get, like a car, and they can actually sort of tie that to that. On the small business side, you know, there's a zero trust paper out by Home Affairs at the moment, and with Dynamic Standards International, we're doing the SMB 1001 that had elements of essential aid in there and all the other stuff. But I think at $95 at bronze level, the government should be covering the cost of that to say it's mandatory for all businesses to be at least bronze, and we'll cover the $95. You pay it, and we'll give you the money straight back. So at least get to, and even if they get to gold, you know, $400 or something like that, the government could cover that because the cost of businesses going out of business, and in this tough time when we've spoken about business, how hard it is to run, you need to run a business. There's stuff that the government could do that actually would protect a lot of businesses, and this is something we'll put in the paper that we'll allocate with Home Affairs. So, yeah, I'm trying to, as you know, and everyone probably listening knows, is that this is the main thing I've been trying to do is grow sovereign capability, help businesses like Coles, you know, become successful, become big, and not just here in this country. It's something that we can export, like we've done with Bugcrowd being $1 billion company now. We mentioned Casada and, you know, Malcolm Turnbull investing in that sort of thing. We need to put our money where our mouth is as a government or governments and actually start to back. We talk about sovereign capability in the cyber strategy. What are we doing to really grow that, right? And that's why the ACN, like the Australian Cyber Network, sort of set up. So, yeah, I'm having a crack myself. I'm probably trying to eat too many bits of the elephant at one time. So my mouth is full a lot of the time and having to wear multiple caps. But these are things we're looking to do it. And through the messaging with Murph and bringing people on like yourself, Cole, it's to promote that, you know, and the government really needs to listen is what it needs to do and stop relying on a cyber attack or an incident like Optus or Medibank or Latitude to get people, oh shit, what's going on? We better do something, and actually do something in between those times to better prepare. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents worth, I think, on that.
Yeah, look, I think I was actually doing a little bit of research on the weekend into the origins of Slip Stop Slap, and actually, what struck me is there's a
A
missing piece
slide
in
and
the.
shade too now, isn't it? Slide and shade. I think slide
Yeah,
on
yeah.
sunglasses and seek shade or something as well. Yeah.
But what motivated the government to basically put all this money and actually coordinate an approach? And it turned out to be the massive cost of treating people for cancer. So
Yep.
cigarettes, you look at the same thing. But unfortunately, with cigarettes, with this, the cost came first,
Yeah,
right?
but that's what will
So
happen in cyber, Tom. That's the thing is what my point before, right, is if you look at the cost of the average cyber attack to business, and it's not always reported. So the ACSC report or the ASD report says there's a report every 6 minutes, right? That's the time it takes someone to fill out the form to get it in there.
yep.
A lot of people aren't going there. They're just paying the ransom, or they're just having their account hijacked on you know, Insta or Facebook, and that's their business marketing. So they just pay it, right? They don't report that to ASD or anything like that. It's a lot more prevalent than what we're seeing out there and having a high financial effect. I mean, remember what Kylie we had on last week, and Kylie was saying she's got a friend, I think it was an accountant or something like that, that
Yeah.
they get ransomware and they just pay it. It's just easier, just cheaper just to pay it and move on and, you know, and get their data back all freed up. So all this is happening. It's behind the scenes. It's almost like illegal drugs and all this sort of stuff. It's happening, but we're not acknowledging it. We're not making any
Yeah.
difference or making an impact on it.
I think like one final thing to add on to that one is that, like, basically in Australians' history, we've had to respond to like lots of different tragedies and come out with some really good
Fires,
things that come
floods,
from each
yeah.
of them. So like I know if I just go back ages, the recession we had to have like resulted in like a lot of economic reforms and actually given us a huge 20 to 30 year like, you know, windfall basically. And then we've also had like our response to the GFC. We've had like obviously all of the natural disasters. We have like you know, the Port Arthur massacre led to our gun laws changing significantly. Like, to me, I don't want to be in a scenario where we have something that is worse than
so
like
massive.
Optus or Medibank, and that we
But
have
it would
to.
be. That's it, Cole. Unfortunately, you're right, mate. That's the unfortunate reality of it is we've had enough scares, I think, with Optus and Medibank. But you know what? The Australian attitude is should be right. Like, oh, it happened. I had to go get a new driver's license, or I had to go do these things, but it didn't really affect me. And that's how I think. But you think about the personal identifiable information that is out there, and you can see it on the dark web. Australia is overrepresented and on a per capita basis higher than anyone else in the world with regards to the information out there. We're seen as a very rich country in the eyes of the main attackers. You know, 500,000 outbound Chinese attackers are looking for it. There's call centers in India looking to log on to people's computers. There's all these things happening because we're seen as a rich target, and the amount of information out there is just crazy at the moment. So if we don't do something soon, we are a sitting duck. And with our infrastructure and critical infrastructure spread as it is across the country and other elements, if we don't do something soon, it's going to be too late. And we are minutes to midnight sort of stuff, I think, on this front.
Cole, just some final thoughts then. And I know we've ended up in a very serious place, but this is a very serious subject. It's always good to have some fun around it. But look, the end of 2024, we definitely haven't seen the significant changes we would have liked out there. It's great that there's a 2030 strategy. We're slowly moving towards it, but ultimately the investment isn't there commensurate to the risk and the damage and the education that people need. So what is one or two things you'd like to see next year massively change in the cyber world around awareness?
Yeah, I guess like the first one is we like overseas in Europe and in America, there is an enormous emphasis on like product security. And because most of our economy is built around like operational technology, professional services, real estate, and mining, there's not particularly much emphasis on that quite yet. And we can see that from like the ISM, the PSPF, and most of the regulatory standards we need to adhere to effectively have a complete absence of anything to do with software security, product security whatsoever. Still focusing on general NetSec, focusing on infrastructure security, focusing on OT, and that's okay. But what I would love to see is that we recognize that it is a domain that we need to be targeting and doing something about, because like the most valuable companies in the world are almost like 9 out of 10 of them are software businesses. I think that the only one that's not a software business is Berkshire Hathaway. And Berkshire Hathaway, funnily enough, has like 1/3 invested in Apple, which is a software business, right? So
well, they sold a lot of that. They sold a lot of that this year. So
they're sitting on the cash. They got all the cash, right? Because they don't know what they want to buy next. So, but what I'm getting at is that like if that's the direction we know we need to move to have a more productive economy, and I know productivity is constantly on the government's agenda now because every business keeps asking them, what are you doing to stimulate productivity in our economy? Like we need to be looking at what we can do to support software businesses to start, grow, and export. And then those software businesses will need security at some level. It doesn't help that none of our regulatory frameworks really, other than doing occasional web app pen tests, have any real emphasis on that. So I would like for politicians or maybe just like businesses to recognize the value that software is and can bring to our economy, and like what kind of opportunities, especially for like bringing money from overseas domestically into Australia, and can really help us out. The other thing I think is that I would like it if we stopped being so critical of each other in the cybersecurity industry.
Yes.
I want everyone to do well, right? We're a bloody small world. Everyone should be friends, and like I understand that there's competitive pressures. There's like you have 7 people bidding on a penetration test, and then you get annoyed at the other 6 vendors, like when you don't get the win or whatever. And so oftentimes we end up in this like situation where we cut each other down, and we focus only on like technical brilliance, and we only focus on like how do I like climb the next rung of my career. I would love you, and like I guess like as part of ACN, to just support other business owners, other people, people who are starting and wanting to break into the industry. What do we need to do to like get rid of this kind of like attitudes that we have, and just spend the time to foster a more inclusive community? So that's a big part of why I wear pink, right?
Yeah.
So
that's it. Yeah, no, that's it's a great way to end it, because that's exactly what we're looking to do, and that's what I'm hoping for 2025 is that we break down all this bullshit siloing of the cyber industry here in Australia, and we're only going to solve this problem if we work in collaboration and work with the innovation, make it more tax effective, do all those sorts of things we've spoken about, mate. I reckon we could do a second one on this because there's so much stuff, but I really appreciate your candor and actually being open. And that's why Tom and I were keen to get you on, because as I said, it's been great watching your journey. I look forward to actually seeing the ascension in the next couple of years as well. And look forward to having you on here when you're a unicorn $1 billion company in a few years' time, mate.
We'll see how that goes. I guess like the bird will be flying pretty high at that point, right?
Yeah, it'll be a big Galah.
The big Galah.
Giant Galah up in Newcastle or out in Hunter Valley in a statue of Cole as a Galah. So, mate, thank you so much for your time. And I think we'll get a lot of good stuff out of this episode. So thanks again, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Look, and just as we're kind of finally wrapping this up, a couple of thoughts that really stuck with me that you shared with us today, Cole. The value of challenging feedback, where we started. I think that was really interesting, the way you faced into a criticism that can crush most people and you've turned it into a strength. Surrounding yourself with really good mentors. I mean, this is where I've had a big win this year. Jason has been a fantastic mentor to me, and I've grown so much. So the value of that relationship is just so important. Look, and lastly, well, second last, I'm just going to say teamwork makes the dream work. I love the way that you've brought that back in. Rather than infighting, how can we all work together and kick over this big goal? And the last one is, I've never had a Marshmallow Santa, so I'm going to have to go and hunt one.
Yeah.
If I can't find one, I'll be around at your place, because apparently you've got all of them there. So thank you so much for joining us, Cole.
I won't be there if you're not quick.
If I'm not
I'll
quick.
eat them all.
All right. Well, look, thank you both for joining us. And have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Thanks, Cole.